Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So I wanted to start, Joel, with a little bit of background, because we have Western students here and probably at least a couple Ivy students. You're an Ivy grad too?
I am, yep.
So you have an HBA from Ivy.
I do.
And you taught, I hear, the major required course at Ivy.
I did, Biz 257, which is great. It was actually my favorite job ever.
Really?
Yeah.
So not so much the running infotech.
Like teaching's very different, right? Like teaching was instantly rewarding, right? Because you're sort of up, you explain stuff. Like, you know, and the 257 course was like how to write business plans and management accounting. So it's more instantly rewarding when you like teach something, people get it, you know, or you help them prepare for an exam. And so I don't know, I just really enjoyed the teaching gig.
And you did that before you started
I
infotech?
did. Yep.
And then one day you just said to yourself, you know, I think instead I would like to have a company that provides information technology solutions to...
It was something like that. So like one of my jobs at the 257 gig was teaching people how to write business plans. And so I spent a lot of time with that material, like I did all the courses on it. And so I just spent a lot of time sort of thinking about that. And as a result, wrote a lot of business plans. And so I actually took the teaching gig with the view that I'd start a business. And so I had 2 years during the teaching gig to write business plans. I wrote a whole bunch of them, and this is the one that I picked to start.
So you had a whole bunch of business plans.
I did.
Is there any that you look back now and think, I wish I'd done that one
Yes.
instead? Really?
Oh yeah. I'm not even sure I made the right choice, but you know, hey, it's so far so good.
Oh, that's like a whole other interview.
It is.
But you did start Infotech. Was it just you?
It was me and my girlfriend at the time, which I don't recommend to anyone. So yeah, that took about a year to unwind, the first year. So that was a little thing, but we got through it. Don't start with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, doesn't matter.
Uh-oh.
It's, you know, we've been dating for 2 months, I think, so yeah. Not my best decision.
So you had pretty good background and credentials, and you chose to start a company instead of get a job.
I did, yes.
What were your reasons for that?
You know, there's a lot of reasons. I did apply for McKinsey Consulting. If I could have gotten that, I would have taken it. I didn't get it. And so I decided to do the teaching gig and try this. My thought was the worst thing that can happen is I screw it up and I'll go back and get my MBA. Like your risk profile when you first graduate is pretty small. It's not like you have a house or a mortgage or, you know, kids to support. And so I thought, so worst thing that can happen, I'll be as broke as I am now. And so I thought it's a good time to give it a try, and so you know it managed to work out.
So I read somewhere that you operated out of your apartment.
Yeah.
For how long?
Years. The first, and we started with no capital. Like so, the whole thing was like bootstrapped. My dad wasn't rich, and so I didn't borrow any money, and so we really had to start with like selling stuff immediately to fund rent. And because my job was up. And so I think I had a grand total of $2,000 saved when I started the business, seriously. And so there was like quite the pressure to like, you know, get it started, generate a revenue stream so that I could pay rent. And so, look, obviously, therefore, we were out of the apartment, my apartment. And it just sort of grew from there, you know, hired one person, 2 people. Eventually my living room became, you know what I mean, like 8 desks.
So you still worked out of your apartment when you had employees?
Oh yeah. Yes.
So what was the first thing that you sold? Who was your first customer?
You know, that's a good question.
Because you obviously didn't have the full...
Yeah, not the stuff that we do now. And so really it started out with a whole lot of product planning. The original idea was that IT is moving rapidly, right? I graduated in 95. And so like the internet was new, and I looked at that and I thought, that might catch on, right? And so I wonder how big companies are dealing with this, right? It's a whole, you know, new big thing. And so given the, you know, the rate of change that we saw going on there and what was going on with IT, the general thought was if you're an accountant or marketing, your stuff doesn't really change. How are the IT guys coping? And so the general idea was to provide, you know, a knowledge-based service to help IT managers stay up to date, provide unbiased advice about should I go Microsoft or IBM, And so that was the general idea. And so I had this whole sketch of what it was going to be. Spent forever prototyping the product. The first thing I did was I found like, I think it was 100 different customers I showed my first prototype to. Anyways, complete debacle, the first prototype, and I completely reinvented, like what we were doing through that, let's call it 6 months of prototyping I did. And so just, with customer feedback, talking to customers, I delivered it. I think the lesson there for me was like rapidly prototype with customers, right? Before, because I was really fixated on this is going to be good, that's going to be good. As soon as I sort of got into market, we had all these realizations of, things we didn't understand that people really wanted, which, drove a lot of the product. And so then the prototyping, I sort of planned to have wrapped up when my teaching gig was wrapped up. At which point we sort of called all the customers that had been prototyping for us and we said, does anyone want to become a member? And at the time, just to be clear, our information product was basically a newsletter, right? And so like I studied all these, I looked at issues that IT managers cared about, read a whole bunch on them and summarized the information for people. So that's what it started out as.
And I heard now you still have the newsletter, but now it goes to like 20,000 people.
Yeah, and so it's really evolved. Like it moved from like, a very bootstrapped thing to where our initial price was like $270 a corporation. And we sort of helped them stay up to date with technology. And now it's more of a comprehensive research house. And so we have individual experts in areas of technology, and we produce like reports and do-it-yourself methodologies and that kind of thing.
So how did you scale that from the original newsletter? Did you go to your existing customers and offer them kind of the upsell to more services, or?
Yeah, so there's an entire process, let's call it a 17-year process there of product development and testing and what have you. At the end of the day, we really engineered around what the services we wanted to provide. So we did a lot of, talking to customers. We do a lot of consulting. And so we go out, we have an entire consulting firm as well. And so one of the things we do is we'll go out with one client and we'll help them do application rationalization. And when we finish that project with the customer, we take all the things we learned, all the knowledge, all the tools, all the templates, and all the end, sort of deliverables, and then we package those up for other companies to use. So it's like a highly leveraged, like we do consulting, we package up the knowledge, and we provide those to our existing customers. And so it was really a scaling of that.
So is it's all still a membership model?
It's all still a membership model. We still have consulting. Now we do a lot of workshops. And so one of the things we found with our membership model, where we give people all these tools or access to templates and what have you, we used to provide help with them over the phone to help teach them how to use it. And really just got to a point where customers really wanted us on site. And so we do there's a ton now of these on-site workshops where we'll go for a week. And if they're kicking off a project, whether it's how to do an IT strategy or, improving their help desk or app rock, we'll show up for like a week and we'll work with that project team. And we'll do like a couple weeks with them at the start of a project, in the middle, at the end. And it sort of helps. They can use their own resources to do a lot of the project, but we're there to provide expertise and guidance versus just man hours. So it's like let's call it highly efficient consulting.
So I want to talk a little, because you mentioned before this interview, you work internationally,
Yep.
but you have some significant challenges because you're based solely in Canada right now. You just said with sending.
Yeah. So there's border issues, right? So to work in the U.S., you need a TN1, which is a work visa to get across. And with us doing all these workshops, it's just you need a new TN1, so you have to go, to this office, fill in a form. It's not so much a problem; it's just a pain. And so you have to drive to the border before you go to the airport. My staff don't like having to drive to Buffalo to get a TN1, before they have to fly away. And so if we have a Chicago office with an address and what have you, we can just transfer them to the Chicago office and it eliminates the visa problems. It's more of a technicality, though, and a nuisance than a major business issue.
So to this point, though, you've been solely in Canada. If you didn't have that, or not, I know you operate elsewhere. If you didn't have the aspect of the in-person consultation, do you think that you would just stay in Canada?
I think that really depends on the nature of your business. So from the start, we targeted the U.S. market. It's huge. It's right there. Like 80% of our current clients are from the U.S. 10% are like UK and Australia. 5% are Canadian. So it's really big companies all over the world that are our customers. As we move more from virtual delivery to like in-person delivery, offices make more sense.
So speaking of which, you have a new office in Toronto.
I do.
Or no, you don't have you have a new office, but you had an existing office before. And you were talking about even as just having the two offices, you said you don't know the people in Toronto as well as you know the people in London. So for people that potentially are looking to scale their company out like through several countries, it seems like how would you manage that? So how are you managing having just two offices fairly close together?
Yeah, totally. So like as you grow, like it's really interesting. You know you start out when you're a small company, you have like a really tight sphere of influence. When you have 10 people, they all work closely with you. So things like vision, direction, decision making is all really fast, and you don't have alignment issues. As you get bigger, your personal sphere of influence changes, right? And so, with us, there's maybe 360 of us now. And so my personal sphere of influence went from everyone at the company who clearly knows what's going on. If they don't know what's going on, they ask me.
Because they were in your living room.
Yeah, totally. And so it's very easy to, to manage misconceptions and alignment issues. And as you grow, you hit these points where, all of a sudden people don't know what's going on, and you're not there to ask, and they don't know why you've made the decision, and that causes a lot of angst, in organizations. Like, why are we doing this stupid thing? I don't understand it. And so, like, there's all kinds of, I think, mechanisms and processes that really help, maintain alignment. So I think it's like once you hit 50 people, you got to change how you're doing it. You're not managing people, you're managing the managers. It's a whole different thing. So you need things like values, and you need systems and processes to help make sure that everyone kind of shares the same values. That being said, my favorite mechanism for sort of keeping people like on the on the same path is we do a monthly town hall, and so like it's where I just make sure we're available, or I'm available, some senior manager's available, and people can come out and ask us any question about like why are we doing this? What about this, right? And so that goes a long way, as long as you create the right environment where it's like you can ask anything, right? It doesn't have to be scripted. Go ahead, anything's up for grabs. Like ask difficult questions, and that helps a lot. And two offices, of course, creates which office do we love better, right? Toronto office is this, and London office is this, and so you get into just managing social groups that form a norm. Yeah. And so two offices is a big thing. It was a big culture shift, right? Because but we try and pull people together, as frequently as we can.
Cool. I also wanted to mention, I read this in the Free Press. Infotech Research Group has never laid off a single employee in 17 years.
It's true.
So that's pretty awesome just looking at the economy, but...
So we've had turnover, like we've had people that have left us or quit, and we've fired people for performance. When the layoff thing, I think, was in the context of we've managed relatively steadily to do a decent job of workforce planning, and so we've never really had to scale back, right, our number of employees or have layoffs to reduce the size of the company.
Yeah, well, that's what I find impressive about it, is that you've never kind of overestimated how many people you need and then had to let them go. You've obviously been really careful about growth.
Yeah, I highly recommend a background in financial and management accounting. If you're going to start a business and you don't know how to do management accounting and like understand, it's the number one thing as an entrepreneur, I would say, is literally understand management accounting, because it's key to making good decisions.
So what does management accounting mean?
It's, yeah, okay, so good. So management accounting, so financial accounting is like scorekeeping, right? It's just like the bookkeeping, sales, revenue, transactions, all that stuff. Management accounting is systematically making decisions using accounting. So it's like differential decision making is the biggest piece. So
if you're an entrepreneur who is an engineer,
yep,
or doesn't have a management accounting background, who do you go look for?
Take 257. It's perfect. It's the,
Well,
again, I
if
hate
you're
to be
not an
hawking my
IB
course,
student.
but and Biz 257 is open to everyone. You can take it at night class. They offer a night class, and it just gives you the right amount of fundamentals. You can read a financial statement, and it teaches you all about management accounting.
So do you really think the CEO of the company needs to have that
Yes,
knowledge? You can't
absolutely.
just hire somebody?
So you're making decisions. If you can't understand the financial implications of your decisions, you are in trouble.
So would you ever, and this is kind of just getting into opinion stuff, would you ever advocate for somebody who doesn't have that knowledge stepping down from the CEO role, hiring a CEO and being something else?
I think you have to learn it. If you're going to make decisions that have significant financial consequences, you have to, like at scale, right? Like, you really should invest the time in a book or a course. So, it's because it's decision making.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Take 257. So I also read in the Free Press once, you said it was supposed to scale way faster. This was supposed to take 5 years. That was a couple years ago.
Yep.
So what were the challenges that you faced? Why didn't we scale that big in 5 years?
Yeah, like how long of an answer do you want?
Like medium-ish.
Okay, medium-ish. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, certainly, like when I was initially projecting, how am I going to grow this thing? I certainly had it scaling much faster. And there's all kinds of different phases of the business, right? So like, in my mind, like phase one is, getting things off the ground, which is really about product acceptance and getting a sales engine that works, right? So will people buy my thing, right? Is my thing good enough that people want to buy it? And can I make my, initial sales process work enough that there's money coming in that I can hire a second person? And that's really your first challenge, right? Will enough, can you solve that problem? And so for us, the phase one, it went pretty well. Where we ran into trouble was like scaling our organization. So this wasn't an app where I could just put it on the store, get some nice PR and like boom, that would be nice. It's a different kind of business. Ours was all about hiring, because it was a business for corporations, we had to scale a sales force. And so, how do we attract talent? How do we train talent? How do we, generate enough revenue to invest in the product size? So right now we have 130 analysts, right? When we started out, it was me, right? And so, from me, I had to have enough salespeople to hire one more analyst, hire a few more salespeople, hire another analyst, raise the price. And so there's this long, very, let's call it incremental process of earning enough money to hire another person to allow us to grow. And so the first 5 years of scaling that was relatively constrained. It's funny, like I look back on it, I'm like, should I have done that differently? Because at some point, it was like right before like year 2000, where I was like, we are ready to take capital. I was going to go out. We'd had years of good growth, and then the dot-com bubble burst. Like just right when I was going into the market, so I felt the company was ready to go raise money, and the market went to hell. And I was like, now is not a good time to raise money, right? So I sort of dug back in. Until this day, we still haven't gone out to market and raised capital, which was like the main constraint, in terms of us growing faster those early years. Now it's not so much a concern.
So do you think you ever will go look for capital?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I can elaborate if you like.
Do you have plans, or are you?
Sure, yeah. In terms of like VCs are scary, evil creatures, right? I literally believe that. So they're adept at making financial deals. Their job is to do the best job for their investors. So they're better negotiators than you, right? So the term sheets are tough. They take a lot of your equity. They're very high price with, often, tough term sheets. And so the longer you wait, the more you're in the driver's seat, in terms of that, kind of relationship. And so, we've certainly waited there. And so the second thing is once you take their money, they have very clear expectations of you, right? They set them down. If you don't meet such expectations, then bad things happen. And so for us, it's really about establishing a very clear path where we can imagine someone gave you $20 million right now. Like how do you spend that, right? Like just spending $20 million in an efficient, effective way. You need a plan, right? You need a plan that you're not just sort of figuring out while you blow money. And so getting to something where you really need the capital and you know how to spend it, and when you spend it, you can get a predictable outcome, is really important. And so for us, so we do a lot of work right now in the IT space where we provide best practices for people in IT. We also do this for the HR division. And so we'll continue to scale into sales and marketing in the other areas. And so, at some point we'll go out and get money. When that is, don't know.
So you don't recommend going and getting a bunch of money?
No, it depends on your business. It depends on your business, right? Like, every business is different. I think the more that you're able to establish a track record of revenue or success, the more negotiation power you have, right? When you're having that discussion. If it's just a PowerPoint business where I wrote some nice things on a page, it's not quite the dot-com era where they're handing big checks out to people.
It's not quite, but sometimes it does happen.
Sometimes it happens.
And then that money gets blown.
And then sometimes it's wildly successful. So,
Sometimes.
I think you have to look at your situation, the business, the opportunity, and ultimately, really decide what's right for you.
I want to go back for a second to the not growing this big in 5 years thing.
Yeah.
So do you think that was just a matter of being really ambitious, or were there mistakes made along the way?
It was capital constrained.
Yeah.
So we had to earn enough money to hire more people to change the product. And so I think there's a lot of businesses, how many people here are building apps or want to build apps? Yeah, okay, so highly scalable business. Build a great app, you know what I mean? Get good PR. I don't know if you need quite the same capital as if you're, building stadiums. So depending on your business and how capital constrained it is, that sort of answers the VC question.
So when you were first starting out, or I guess particularly a little after you were very first starting out, it sounds like you totally bootstrapped this and
Completely.
were just super smart going in. Where did you get support? Were there people that helped you? Or organizations?
Yeah, biz school's helpful. You know what I mean? We're a very by-the-book organization, right? They teach you courses and all these things, marketing, product design, sales management. And so we did things a lot by the book.
Yeah.
And so, I'd say that was, if you ask me what was the biggest support, I feel it was a real advantage to have gone to school for, how to run a business. I still wish I was a programmer, right? To this day I'm not, but, so I don't know. I believe in education and training. So whether it's, biz school or your technical training, the actual courses are, to me, more valuable than seminars or conferences or networking. I like courses.
Yeah.
I still take them.
At Ivy?
All over the place. So different courses all the time, sometimes on leadership, sometimes on, wherever I feel the pain.
Cool. So a lot of people don't think that the traditional business school education translates very well to the kind of company where you're looking to build something in a new market. But
I think it translates 100%.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think that, it's like anything. If you're going to be a doctor, how about go to school and study it for a couple of years, right? If you're going to start a business, learning about the fundamentals of business management definitely will help. Unless, you build some genius tech app that, is better than Google at search, then, you know what I mean? You can be successful based on your technical or engineering capabilities. But I generally believe studying the things you're going to do helps.
I think I probably agree with that.
It's good.
So if we can talk a little bit about kind of your plans for the future.
Sure.
You mentioned that your intention is to scale by moving into
New markets?
other aspects of business rather than just geographically or both, right? So how do you just go back to the customers that you already have and offer them, now we're doing HR stuff and you can, or how do you, when you're looking at a new market, do you start all over from that point that you talked about where you had your prototype that you went and talked to hundreds of people about? How do you do that?
Yeah, so we engage in, let's call it sophisticated annual planning. Right? So part of our planning is all about all our functions. So we look at, how's our HR group doing, right? Or how's our marketing group doing? Or how's our IT group doing? What are the, the things, the processes that we have to be good at, and where are we going to invest our time? So each department sort of does an annual planning of what are my priorities, right? What are my goals, and what big projects we're going to have. So it sort of starts out with all the department planning. Then the second thing that we do is we do, it's a whole series of market research where we look and we understand, okay, what's going on in the market, right? What are the opportunities that exist? And then we sort of, we plan backwards for what new launches or new product initiatives, do we want to bring to the market? So which is a different team, a product development team. So we have an actual team that, helps with product development.
So when you decide that you want to tackle a new market in the product, you have a team that does that. Do they then become the team that handles that new product, or do you hire new people to handle the new product and they go back to looking for new?
It's a whole collection of stuff. So we have a consulting division that does consulting growth. And so the consulting division's rewarded around growth, right? The executive in charge. And so, he sits down and he annually picks a growth rate he wants, right? We want to grow at 60% this year or 30%. And we work backwards to say, okay, what, offerings and products do we have in order to achieve that? And so in our consulting division right now, they're focused a lot on enterprise clients. And so we have a lot more large enterprise client work that we're doing, which comes in fits and starts. And so, that group so far, they're like 120% growth on the year. 7 months in. So they're doing really good. Our HR division is also, doing really well. So they're just scaling against, more customers for the same product. So deeper market penetration. So every group's sort of different. We've got another group where we're doing a lot of benchmarking. And so some of it is wrapping consulting around our benchmarking and offering that to the largest clients, et cetera, et cetera. So every group is really responsible for, planning.
Cool. So you mentioned you're managers of different departments.
Yep.
If we can go kind of back to the beginning, what was the first manager that you hired or put somebody in a management position? What aspect of the company were they?
Yeah. First manager was sales. And so I used to, manage the sales force during the day and do product development at night. It was awesome. There was like a good number of years of not fun. And so really when I was able to hire the first sales manager and get the hell out of sales and really focus only on the product development side, that was the first. And it's interesting because at first when we were growing, the first thing I did was I really was excited about hiring super experienced outside people. Right? So who has a lot of experience, really senior, can bring something to the company. And so for years, it was always about layering in these experienced senior managers. And honestly, I've come full circle on that, where now, these days, I am heavily biased to promoting from within. I find hiring an outside executive, regardless of their experience, is at best a crapshoot. And you're significantly better win chances on someone internal that their work and gets promoted within. They have a much higher ratio of success. So my preference now has moved from always put some fancy person with tons of experience. I'd rather have someone inside, who I know the work and will work hard and we can train them versus the fancy executives.
Do you think having the fancy executives early on gave you some cred?
I don't know. And I think that was what it was about for me to begin with. These fancy executives are going to teach us everything that we need to know that we don't. And what I found is a lot of them came with, this is what I used to do at IBM, or this is what I used to do at, thing, and I want to do that here, versus understanding the business. And I've had some really smart executives that, have been brought in and had wild success and really moved the business forward with their experience. But I'd say on average, you're better promoting within. There's a cultural impact, there's a promotional impact, there's a work hard impact. Train them versus hire is generally our preference now.
And do you think that that's probably a good general rule for everybody, or do you think it's specific to the companies that have sort of a bit of a more hard to understand niche?
I think generally that would work for everyone. I think that, it depends on your situation, the skill set you're looking and whether you have the skill set or not. But if you have really smart, talented people internally, giving them more opportunities has worked out really well for us. And so we put in, we have really smart people, for all our analysts, we won't hire people if they're not on the dean's list. Right? It's it's exclusive role, only.
Any school?
We focus really on Western, just because. Each school you have is overhead to, go there and do. So we really hire from Western, and we don't care which program you're from, but you have to be on the dean's list. And so we have all these smart people, and I found that giving them opportunities is better than hiring more fancy executives. We still have our fair share, but it just works out better.
So do you think when you expand internationally, you're going to continue to hire people from Western? Or?
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah, certainly.
You're not going to look at Harvard or anything?
Well, and I think once you're in a local market, you'll hire locally.
Yeah. When you were first starting out and you were ready to hire the sales manager, obviously that means you're incurring, I assume, a significant expense.
Sure.
So you're making a lot less work for yourself, but you're also giving up a fair chunk of money. How did you know that it was the right thing to do for your business in the long run, as opposed to continue doing it yourself a little longer?
Yeah, so really we tried to earn the money first, right? So we wanted to make sure that, we got to a point where our reliable monthly revenue was higher than our expenses, and we were comfortable that we could maintain that level of revenue, and then we'd bring our expenses up to a certain level, that we were comfortable wouldn't cause a problem, and maintain a cash balance. And so you just can't hire too aggressively. If you have, let's call it $10,000 a month coming in, you don't want to be spending $9 million, right? So, it's
I think a lot of people make that mistake.
That's why the financial management accounting.
Okay, I'm going to take the course.
Cash flow planning. Yep, totally.
So you said reliable monthly income on a
Yeah.
membership model, and was it at that time an annual membership?
Yeah, it was.
So on a membership model, how long do you take with people on an annual membership before you're sure that you have a reliable monthly income and everybody's not going to cancel?
Yeah. So, this is cash flow, like a cash flow model, right? So we'd figure out what our key variables. In our case, it was renewal. We had to know, if all the people are coming up, what is our average renewal rate? We tried to maintain an average renewal rate of above 80%.
Over how many years? How long?
We always try and maintain it above 80%. We have times where it's gone up to 85. We've had financial crises where it's dropped to 69, and I've had a panic.
But did you wait until it was 80% renewal over 2 years, or was it?
Yeah, so we manage our key variables, right? So there's certain key variables in every business, right? And so on the Engage side, your average renewal rate and your average contract value are your two key renewal rates, or two key metrics. On our acquisition side, we have the number of appointments people go to, their close ratio, their average selling price, and we know that, as long as we watch those variables, we can predict the outcomes.
Okay. That makes sense. Management accounting.
Yep.
I don't know what time it is. It's okay. So when because it's okay to say your intention is to expand internationally.
It is.
You're still going to be based in Canada.
I will be.
You're going to export people to.
Just a couple, but we'll hire new people wherever we go.
And then is there a plan to expand beyond there and into other
I
markets?
believe so. Yeah, over time, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. But still be based in London?
We will maintain our London office. Yeah, always.
So I've seen you answer this question in a couple of different newspapers, but I'm going to ask it again.
Sure.
Why do you stay in London?
Because we have over 200 some odd employees here, and replacing them all somewhere else, we'd lose a lot of knowledge and capital and what have you. And so we've built a Toronto office. And I don't think it would make sense to try and relocate 200 plus some odd families. And so, maintain the Toronto office and, grow other offices as we need is really the plan.
But there are otherwise no significant advantages to being in London?
Oh yeah, so no, London's a great place. I love London. The school here is an amazing source of talent. It's a great place to live. I live here myself and I love it here. We go to Toronto. I personally like living here, so each to their own, but I'm certainly a fan.
Are you from London originally?
No, I'm from Toronto, actually.
But you went to Western.
Yeah,
Is that why
I
you
went to
came
Western,
here?
Yeah.
I don't know if that meant keep going or. Okay. So you have now 300 and.
340-ish.
340-ish.
Someone else would know that number.
Someone else knows that number. Okay. And you've never taken funding from anywhere.
Haven't? Nope.
What about? You said you didn't borrow any money from any rich parents.
Nope.
So not even a
Well, for mortgages,
loan.
right? So we've tended to invest in the places that we occupy. So we own our office here, and we own the new office in Toronto. We rented in Toronto for a while, but we decided to buy recently, and so we have mortgages with those.
But they're just mortgages on the property?
Just mortgages on the property.
That's amazing that you've never...
Yep. And a lot of businesses, like, it just depends on the business, right? If you're building restaurants, you need to take debt, right? Because all your expenses are up front. Our business is in professional services, and it should be able to be cash flow positive, right? A lot of business, if you're in manufacturing, every time you expand, you got to buy more equipment. You certainly require debt financing. So I think it depends on the nature. Like, and I think with .com businesses or things where like apps, a lot of those, they don't have to be heavily debt financed. Some certainly require it. So I think it really depends on the nature of your business, whether, what financing model you use. Like, I certainly wouldn't say I'm anti-equity, I'm anti-debt. It's just, it depends on your model.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about how you've 4 times been on the 50 Best Workplaces in Canada list, and some of your practices for managing your team.
Totally.
So in specific, I heard that you run on a 6-week cycle, and do you still do that?
So so our research, we produce our research in 7-week sprints. So it's like an agile sort of methodology, and this is just like the best workplaces thing is totally different than how we manage research. So like we use an agile method for producing research, and we use a 7-week sprint process. So we have 7 weeks of everyone has a project, and rather than doing and so we have at any given time like 37 different research projects going on, which is a ton of project management. And so we just standardize it. We say, look, you have either 1 sprint or 2 sprints or 3 sprints to complete a research project, and everyone's supposed to start the research process and complete an output in 7 weeks. And so it's a very systematic process, and we look at the production of knowledge or research as a manageable process. We have a predictable process with predictable outcomes, and so we really work hard to optimize. What does week 1 look like? How can we make week 1 more effective, right? So what can we do better to engage clients early, right, and make sure we have the right 25 customers to bring in, interview, and what have you. So that's basically our manufacturing process is how we create research, and so we spend a ton of time optimizing the research process. But I don't think my staff would tell you our research production process is really.
It's not why they love being an employee?
Well, yeah, I think some of them like it, but I wouldn't say that's the thing. I can talk about that if you want, though.
Yeah, I would love for you to talk about
great.
that.
So engagement's huge. Certainly for us, we don't have real estate. We don't have real estate assets. We have people. And so we manage engagement. It's like a conscious thing. So we measure staff engagement twice a year, right?
How do you measure that?
We have a survey. It's a tool that we.
If they complete the survey, they're engaged.
Yes, and so there's 5 forces, and and I won't go into details on the engagement survey, but we try and understand how much do you really like your job. Is your job engaging and exciting? Do you like the company? Do you find that we're fair? Right? Do you have trust with your manager? Do you have predictable? Performance reviews where you believe they're objective and realistic. So there's all kinds of factors like job satisfaction, is the company fun, all those things. And so the more fun thing to talk about, the reality of engagement is job design. Can you design jobs that are engaging for people? And then second of all, can you give them responsibility and accountability? So the more that people have actual responsibility and a feeling of ownership over the work they do, the more engaged they're going to be. And so we really work hard to push, accountability to, across the team, not just centralize it with one person. So I think that's the most important thing with driving engagement. But more fun to talk about here is all our fun little things that we do, because we do all kinds of fun things, right? So what are some of my favorites? So we have a fun day. So the last day of fiscal year, we have basically, remember grade 6, we have play day? We have play day.
Wait, the last day of your fiscal year is play day, not hurry up and get this stuff done day?
Yep,
that's
play
good
day.
management. I'm going to take this course.
And so, play day's fun, right? So we have those big blow-up obstacle courses, right? We have teams of 6. We end up at Barney's, you know what I mean? So it's a whole fun day of that kind of thing. What other things do we do? We do a kids' Christmas party. It's one of my favorite things. So for all the people with parents, we have a wicked kids' Christmas party. We're at the bouncy castle for the kids, and things like that.
When did you start doing things like that?
Right away.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
even when you were in your living room.
Yep. We always had. I don't know if it's the first year because I don't think anyone with kids worked for me. But early on, we did kids' Christmas party. And kids are great because kids are all it's awesome to kids. Like adults, you can have the best party in the world. They're like, yeah, it's cool. Kids have a lot more fun with it. So we do a lot of things like that. We do. We have. So we've got the People's Democratic Republic of Fun in London here, and it's like this employee led group, and some other crazy name in Toronto. I can't remember the name. But anyways, there's two employee groups, and so they have a $5,000 quarterly budget to do events and things. And so we do all kinds of 10-minute sort of interruptions to your day. So just recently they filled up all these balloons with up in the thing, so everyone came into the atrium. It's all filled with balloons. Everyone pulled down a balloon, and they had $500 bills in them and 50. So we did that for 10 minutes, and then went back to work. And then another time we did 10 minutes where everyone just sort of came down, and they're all surprises, right? The key is surprise. So then they built this big battleship, and we have a balcony, and we have a paper airplane throwing contest. So fun things like that to sort of engage people is important. And people get creative with it, and it's 10 minutes of come down, have fun, yay, and then go back to a job.
10 minutes every day?
Not every day. No. Usually once every 2 months. Irregularity is important.
Okay.
It can't be predictable or it's boring.
That's a good psychology rule.
There you go. Golden Easter egg hunt. That one's always cool. We do that. That's predictable.
It's always at Easter.
Yep.
So do you have, a employee relations person employed to do that, or is it kind of a? Do you do that? How engaged are you with that stuff?
So all managers, we have report cards for managers on the engagement of their team. So we judge managers based on how engaged is your team, which isn't are you nice to them or do they love you? It's do they is your team engaged in the work? And so it's a management responsibility. Every manager, director is responsible for that.
For having fun.
Well, not fun. And this is the difference. Fun's part of it. It's about having a team that cares about the work. And so,
okay. So when you do your survey, what do you do with the results of? Can you give an example of how you use that?
We create report cards for managers.
Can you give an example of anything you've adjusted within the company as a result?
Totally. So one of the trends that we saw was that vets were feeling unloved. People who had been there, let's say for a large number of years, but weren't promoted to an executive or a senior management role, but they're solid employees at what they do. They hadn't necessarily advanced. Some of those vets were feeling unappreciated, and so we created a veterans club. And so every quarter, we get all our veterans together, and we ask them for feedback. And so we have special exercises to make sure that, those people who have been with us the longest are, we talk to them and we, make sure they feel appreciated, but also, they're more involved in things. So it's a good example of, and it was clear on the survey, these people have been here 5+ years, not in senior management positions, pissed. And we were able to turn those numbers around.
Wow, that's good. So that's good data analysis there. So it pays to have a bunch of analysts working for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably it's time for some Q&A. Does anybody have any questions, or should I just keep asking questions?
I think that was a question even.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so theoretically, if it existed, say a year after you started your business and you went on Dragon's Den and you did a whole pitch of your business, do you think you'd get an offer?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Mostly because I think we had, the number one thing that I think that they look for is reliable sales results that are scalable. And the first thing that I focused on was, how can we drive, your sales is number one. Product design leading to sales, which is really product acceptance, right? Sales figure is really just people voting, right, if they like your product with money, right? And so, we focused on that for the first 5 years. I think that's what they're looking at, is validation that people want your stuff. Jim?
In You mentioned you didn't end up pursuing an MBA, I believe. How do you see the importance of an MBA within running your company or within your employees?
I think you need to learn the material, right? So like here at Western, an HBA and MBA are relatively similar. You can learn the same material. We hire HBAs because we like the talent better. The quality of any given program is a function of the quality of their applicants. MBA programs are really competitive, and I think HBA attracts better candidates. And so I think either one's fine. Just get the courses is more important, for an entrepreneur. The courses are more important than the piece of paper. I don't know if that answers your question.
Cool. If let's say you didn't bootstrap your whole way and you stopped financing from the beginning,
No.
Do you think you'd be further than where you are today?
I think so. And I think it's probably a mistake. Frankly, it's you never really know. I think there's definitely a number of points where I could have accelerated growth. And it's still I still wonder about it sometimes. Should I do it now, or should I wait? Right? And so it's just it becomes managing the VCs and managing the finance becomes your job, right? You start reporting to them and that, versus focusing on the things. So I don't know. I'm probably a bad one to ask because I didn't go down that path. And sometimes I have real what if I had? And I think I will still. You never know what the outcome would be.
I think you're doing all right.
Yeah, so far, so good.
I already know the answer to this, but I think it's a really cool story. Can you tell us about what you do immediately after Fun Day from an innovation perspective?
I think we go to Barney's. So is there another story that I'm supposed to remember?
It's what you do either right before or right after Fun Day. It has to do with the teams and the business cases.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, fair enough. So we actually do go to Barney's right after, but right around that same time period, we have an annual case study. Not at Barney's, not during the Barney's period, but we have 3 days where we take everyone after Fun Day. They have 3 days to work on a case competition. And so we take one of our most pressing problems for the next upcoming year, something we're sort of worried about. Okay, we have to decide what to do with, growing consulting or managing the, small enterprise division. And we write up a whole case around here's how we're thinking about the problem. And we give everyone time off to get into cross-functional teams of, from across the departments. And they go away for 3 days. They work on it. They build presentations. They write a report. And we have, $20,000 in prizes for the team that comes up with the best solution over those 3 days of cases. So it's like hiring a consultant, but rather than hiring the consultants, we make sure we save that money for the staff themselves to get together, creatively work on the problem, and we get awesome ideas and solutions against that. So we have presentations, and it sort of gives people a chance to get out of their traditional role, right, whether they're research or sales, and sort of help us with planning. And so it's back to meaningful engagement. If you throw parties all the time, it's not meaningful engagement. I love throwing parties, don't get me wrong, but the meaningful engagement is almost more important, I think. Thank you. It's a great question.
It's hard to frame this the right way, but your Infotech is called one of the biggest IT research firms in the world, or top 10, I think. And when you had originally started, what was your, basically where did you get the vision, or did you have the audacity to create something that big, or?
Yeah, that was the plan. We'd hope, for that, and so it's our market space. There's just not a lot of competitors in it. So when we looked at it, when I initially started, there was people who provided advice to really big companies, and no one was doing that for mid-sized companies. And so when we first started out, we were really focused on mid-sized companies because there's no one there. But our goal was certainly to grow, to be the biggest. We're still trying to catch up. And so our biggest competitor is sadly a $1.6 billion firm. And so they're kind of bigger than us, a lot. So we have 2% market share. So we're really a challenger in our marketplace. And we're trying to be incredibly innovative with our product set because we have this $1.6 billion gorilla and us. And so that's still it's still a real challenge, right? So for us to continue to grow and to can steal more market share. So every single year we judge ourselves based on how much more market share can we steal from this evil gorilla, and how can we continue to be innovative in terms of the different ways in which we solve these problems in them that's more valuable than our competitors. So lots of challenge out there still to be at a place where I think we can be viewed even as an equal competitor. We're still very much a challenger. But we have lots of really big fans, right? So we're slowly converting them is our goal.
So you have a virtual product. So I'm curious, what are your biggest operating costs? Is it just like the labor and the analysts?
People, and then people.
So do you consider it more of a product or a service?
It's funny. So our product is really, we looked at traditionally what is a service market, and we tried to, we productize it. So, traditional consulting firms, they figure out how to do IT strategy, and they just, keep charging people the same every time they do it. We'll do like an IT strategy project. We try and take the knowledge from that and package it up and make it really easy for you to, it's do-it-yourself consulting is what we sell, right? It's really the idea. And what I've found is we've moved more and more from the complete productization to adding services to it. So now we with let's say IT strategy or fix your help desk or optimize your help desk. Besides just read the material and the tools and the presentations yourself, we'll actually get on the phone and coach people through it. So we'll have 8 different calls over the course of 4 months to help a client get it really done, get them over the hump. And we've even got to the point where we'll go on site just to get let's call it corporate energy or energize people around the change. And so I don't know, is it a product, is it a service? We really try and play with that. We blur those lines a lot.
You said you always wanted to be a programmer.
Yeah.
How do you think your business would be different if you had that background experience?
In my business, so I think it would be worse. Just because as is, I got to really focus myself to get out of the weeds, right? It's really important that I'm still heavily involved on the product design development side. And so, while I, sometimes I hear, how long does that take? Well, let me do it. You know what I mean? Probably not the right answer for me at this stage. I think early on, I would have been more involved in things. Maybe I think for me now, I got to stay out of the weeds, although it's tempting, right? And, just being in this industry as long as I have been, and I've worked with all kinds of applications. Just the one thing I haven't done is application programming. And it's just a thing.
I tried it, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, there you go. I keep being tempted, and I have a friend who started a training course, to train people on mobile app development in 7 weeks or whatever. And I keep wanting to go, but I've resisted the temptation so far. Maybe after Infotech.
Now, you've indicated that you put an emphasis on hiring top talent from Ivy, I assume, as well as other programs. What do you do to attract that top talent when they're also being, I guess, courted by San Francisco and New York, McKinsey, Google, Facebook, very romanticized work?
Yeah. So if you get an offer from Google, Facebook, or McKinsey, I'd recommend you take it, right? That would be my advice to people. Those are fantastic opportunities. They're great jobs. I think our analysts though, it's a sexy job. Being a research analyst is the nature of the work is you're paid to think for a living, right? And so I think the job itself is exciting and fun. So the nature of the work helps us attract people. That being said, I'd still take Google, right? So I think certainly, but I'd take us over Ernst & Young. So. You know what I mean? We fit into that competitive space of jobs, I think, quite well. I think there's some tier A firms I'd recommend people take, but I'd say that we're, probably more exciting and better opportunities than your traditional accounting firm or your B-level consulting firm. I think we compete nicely in there.
On the topic of getting top talent in,
yep.
You mentioned you'd only hire Dean's List students.
Yep.
Do you think this is the right way, and how do you incorporate learning outside the classroom in that?
So the question, did we do that right away?
Or just, what's your approach to that, and how do you incorporate, I guess, learning outside of the classroom?
Yeah. So, our approach to it is, with research, we're creating knowledge-based products. And like just with our experience, really good talent creating knowledge-based products is critical. So like we've just seen a huge difference, between hiring smart people at a premium price versus, not. And so we've tested it. We've tried both ways. We found that to be effective. How do we create learning outside of the class? Learning was the question. So the whole job is learning, right? You're in there. You're doing research for a living. So you're learning stuff. That's our research process, to learn, to write, to create knowledge-based products. The most important, I think, learning for our research analyst team is going on site to deliver their material. So they work on a research project for 7 weeks. That creates an output, and so the most important learning is go deliver that to a client. And so every single time after we build research, we send them off to a client and say, deliver it, right? And like that, the learning of understanding, okay, how impactful was I, like in a room with, if you're doing optimize the help desk, and then you're on site at Coca-Cola with the help desk people trying to use your product to, show them how to improve the help desk. It's direct feedback, right? And so it's a really good way for them to understand the customer and to validate, that what they did was effective this time and know how to improve it moving forward. So it's all closing the loop and validating on site with customers. Sir?
What's the last book that you read?
Good question. I assume not fiction, right? Okay, so fiction. Mark, so Hamilton. I read this sci-fi set that's I like sci-fi, right? Not so all future and space. And it's this big space opera. I can't remember, Mark Hamilton or something is his name. And as for a business book, the last one was, I'm bad with the name. It was something like you think you have a strategy, but you don't. And so I'm a book junkie. I go on Amazon all the time, and buy books and hand them out to staff. I think it's really important to just-in-time learning all the time, and so I buy books personally. And the thing I do with books, certainly business books, that I recommend, is I read the first chapter, I read the last chapter, and within each chapter itself, I'll read the opening paragraph and skim it. And so I'll go through a book and I'll read the first intro for every paragraph and be able to go through it like this. If it's really relevant to me, I'll read the whole chapter. But I'm not very, I'll skip and I'll hit so I can get through more, and I only dive in when I need to, versus open a book, get to chapter 2 and get bogged down. I never sort of let myself get bogged down in business books. Just something if you're reading them. And I buy a lot of them. And just in time, if I'm doing a project on any given thing, I'm trying to do engagement, I'll go out, I'll buy 4 books on engagement, I'll go through that. It gives me a bunch of immediate ideas to help me with whatever I'm working on right then.
Going back to when you originally started, it sounded like you picked a really good opportunity. You said you had a bunch of different business cases, and really liked the. It sounds like you had that. There was an underserved market with the mid-level company for IT, which was up and coming.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that giving advice to someone starting now, that would be they could go after a search engine, or do you think someone could look at a business case related to 3D printing or bioengineering or something?
So I have a 4-point system to evaluate new business opportunities. It's there's more complex ones, but the simple version is sellability, scalability, cost structure, and the one biggest thing. All right. So first thing is sellability. Right. The number one thing you got to figure out is who is going to give you their hard-earned money for your product. Right. At the end of the day, if you're going to be self-sustaining, you got to create a product where there's sufficient need that people are going to give you money. And so, testing that is the number one thing. And so when I look at stuff, I'm like, how sellable is that? How likely are people, how necessary is that to people that they will, hand over money? So that's the first thing I always evaluate, is how sellable is that? Second thing I look at is how scalable is it? If you can sell it once, it's nice, but, will this thing grow, right? If you're going to get into it, it's important it's scalable. I always look at the cost structure. So, try and understand, is all the risk up? Do I have to build this massive thing and then hope I open the doors and it goes good? right? So how can I, what is the cost structure of how I make money? It's back to the economics of things, which I won't go into too much. And the final thing I look at is what's the one biggest thing, right? So what's the one biggest thing that's either going to make this work or screw it up? Because that one biggest thing is often, the critical element you need to manage. And so it's just a quick model. Those are the 4 things I look for in order when I'm looking at, at opportunities.
So you mentioned you had a growth kind of transition around 50 employees, but there was likely a time where you personally were leading leaders prior to that. Can you kind of just take your perspective in the company from like 1 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 350?
Yeah. And there's clear time periods where the nature of your work changes. And so I'd say 1 to 30, you're all hands-on, everyone looks to you. And it's somewhere above 30 where you've got to start managing managers. And that's like one of the clear transition where it's not your voice all the time. And so you really have to decide, okay, what are you okay with, right, in terms of other managers' behavior? Because I have a certain style, right, in terms of how I answer questions, how open I am, that kind of thing. So how tolerant will I be of adapting to other people's styles? And so it's a real question. We have a don't be a jerk, right, is one of our values. And it's important, right? If you let people, managers especially, I have a much higher bar for my managers. So it's okay as a staff member, you're, let's say, a little gruff and grumbly, but if you're a manager and you're starting to affect other people, I think it's more important. So there's a thing there with learning how to manage managers. Then there's a thing with, communication. So I don't know when it happened, 100 employees or 2 locations where like misunderstandings are one of the biggest things you face, where people don't understand why they've been asked to do things, or they think this, even though this is the thing. So clearing up misunderstandings so your whole team's aligned is like a major thing, right? Because people don't always say, like, I'm mad at you for this. They just get mad, right? Like, you know what I mean? They don't really come tell you. They don't want to say anything to you anymore because they don't know you really well. And so really proactively, creating opportunities for, to clarify messages and repeat things. The number of times where obviously we have a strategy, it's perfectly clear, we rolled it out, and people don't, so you have to repeat things a lot to make sure, people understand them. So that's probably the 2 biggest transitions, managing the managers and managing the misunderstandings. Those are probably the 2 points that I was like, this is significantly different than what I was doing before. And then, then after managing the managers, it's managing the executives, where you're too caught up in day-to-day stuff and the scope of what you're doing. You got to change. I find I'm the biggest bottleneck behind our growth, right? Because I'm still focused on this, where I have to, change the things I'm working on. And so now at at 360 employees, I can't fix your projects for you. Again, I do that a lot. I'll roll up my sleeves and, oh, no problem, let's do this, right? Let's work on this project. Let's scope the requirements. What are we going to do? Blah, blah, blah. But the more I'm doing that for people and with people, the less I'm doing my job. Because my executives at this point, they have to be able to plan the projects. And if I'm doing the work for them, and so it's a real thing. And frankly, I'm still struggling with it. Right now, I roll up my sleeves on too many projects versus be like, okay, you're the executive. You got to figure this out, man. If you can't, we have a problem. And so that's another weird transition that right now I'm struggling with. I don't know if that answers.
I'm going to ask one last question myself.
Sure.
So you just mentioned wanting to roll up your sleeves, and earlier you dropped maybe after Infotech. So is your plan to start something new and roll up your sleeves?
Yeah, and so I taught this course on how to write business plans. And, so I come up with a lot of them. And so it's hard. I want to start all these other things, but remaining focused is really important. So, it's I still have 10 years in me of Infotech, so I think it's a really good thing. I love the people, I love the type of work we do, but I also want to do other things. And so at some point, I definitely will do something else.
Cool. Well, I very much look forward to seeing what you do next.
All right.
Thank you so much for being here. We are at over an hour, so thank you for hanging
No
in
problem.
there. Big thanks to Joel.